everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Daniela Schwartzman. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager here at BayWa, and it is a tremendous pleasure for me to welcome you to our webinar, Made in America, Silfab Solar's Domestic Advantage with BayWa r.e. Super excited. Before we kick it off, a little bit of housekeeping. Make yourself familiar with the different buttons on Zoom. The most important one for you today is the Q&A button. So this is where you can ask your questions, and we'll weave them in as we go along. And there's also another opportunity at the end of the webinar to ask more questions. You will see in the chat a couple of links where you can find out a little bit more about BayWa and about our products and our web store. But if you are not familiar with BayWa, let me just give you a brief introduction. BayWa stands for focusing on your success. That's our priority. We have a couple of tools how we can achieve that. So for forecasting, you have dedicated account managers, and they're always available for you to provide you with guidance, so you can plan effectively with accurate forecasting, making sure that you service your homeowner efficiently. The web store is super easy to use, up-to-date pricing, immediate ordering. It simplifies your entire purchasing process, and you also have all the information of previous orders. Everything is in there, so really convenient for you. Commercial services. We have a specialized commercial services desks who offer help with expert planning and precise product inventory forecasting for any of your commercial projects, assisting you with the design planning and more. Pricing, important. Consistent pricing is what BayWa stands for. Because of our centralized structure, you can benefit from consistent pricing across all strategically located U.S. warehouses, eliminating any unexpected fees. So those strategically located warehouses, you can easily access the products that you need wherever you are in the country. Also, job site delivery. With convenient direct job site delivery, the products can be delivered directly to your job or construction site without any need for a middle warehouse. So if you are a US-based installer and not yet working with us, explore the links that should be populated in the chat right now, so you can learn more about how we can support your business, and a representative will reach out to you and discuss your needs. So before I hand it over to Ryan, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of our disclaimer, because we are going to dive really deep into domestic content today. It's a very hot topic, and we are so thrilled to have Silfab talk about that, because they're real experts in the field. But just do know that we are not tax advisors. So all the information that is provided here is for general informational purposes only, and should not be construed as tax, legal, accounting, or financial advice. BayWa and its employees are not qualified in these fields, and we do not hold any relevant certifications or licenses. So please, before you make any decisions that are related to taxes and the matters herein, please seek the assistance of your qualified advisor. Thank you. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Ryan Adams. He is the Director of Business Development at Silfab Solar. I am so excited, Ryan, to have you here and talk about Made in America, your domestic advantage with BayWa r.e. Thank you for being here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for joining here. It's a busy time for everyone. Lots going on in the industry, as always. Like, we needed more happening in solar to keep ourselves busy. But we're going to go over a bit of everything today, a little bit of the background on Silfab and the modules, and then get into what is domestic content, what is the overarching IRA bill, and I'm trying not to get too far into the current policy that's making its way through the House and Senate, because we don't know where it will end up. We don't know ultimately what it means for our business, but we can certainly hypothesize and discuss, where Silfab may fit into that equation. So appreciate the introduction. Yeah, Ryan Adams, the director of business development here for 7 wonderful years. Prior to that, 6 years at SolarEdge, doing similar stuff and distribution and utility scale development before that. So been having the crap beat out of me on the solar coaster for many years, and enjoyed most of them. So hopefully, can everyone see my screen here? It says that we can, therefore we will go. Perfect. So if you do have questions on a certain topic that I've covered too quickly, my apologies. I know the material well, so I do go fairly quick in my cadence. Please do throw something into the Q&A, and let's address it at the time, so you don't forget the question or we don't skip over top of it. So we're going to start off here with just a bit of a background on who is Silfab, right? So I'm going to turn my camera off as well because I've had issues with bandwidth today. Make sure that my video, the screen comes through and not the video. So the Silfab lineage of companies has been around since 1981. So we've been involved in global PV supply chain for 40 some odd years. The individuals on that side of things invested in Silfab Americas and started our first plant in the west side of Toronto, Canada, back in 2010. We built the Silfab brand, but also did OEM for many of the major tier 1 brands that you see in the market today. That was kind of the first 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So got our feet wet, building a brand, but also learning from the supply chain and the R&D and product development side of some of the biggest companies in the world at the time. At that point, went exclusively Silfab and started buying up manufacturing capacity and expanding our footprint. So when we came to the Americas and started doing this, though, there really wasn't any PV module manufacturing capacity, right? There wasn't a bunch of plants. We weren't able to steal a lot of engineering and automation folks from it. So a lot of the background of Silfab actually comes from the automotive side of things, right? The high parts per million or low parts per million defect rate, the high levels of automation, et cetera, that you would see in the automotive side of things has been replicated throughout our plants. And even some of the major operational staff, plant managers really did get their starts on the automotive side and now applied that trade to the solar side for the last 15 years. So the top right-hand corner of that map, obviously Toronto, Canada. We still do own that building, but are no longer actually producing there. We have now officially moved 100% of our manufacturing equipment into the US. The upper left-hand side, Burlington, that was the first acquisition back in 2017, 2018. It was actually Bellingham, Washington, about 45 minutes up the road. We bought an existing facility with a production line, gutted the place, doubled the production capacity, and continued to grow and kind of outgrew that facility pretty quickly. And so moved into a location in Burlington, Washington, which is about 45 minutes down the road, closer to Seattle. And that facility, 250-ish, 260,000 square feet. We've now amalgamated the equipment there. So we have a gigawatt of module capacity in that facility, and a lot of our product development team, a lot of the operational engineering staff reside in that location for making sure that we've got that operational excellence in that facility on that side of the country. We have quickly outgrown that as well, obviously with the market share growth along with the size of the industry growth that we have all, whether you like it or not, experienced over the handful of years in the last 10 years. So the big red dot on the bottom right-hand side there is the latest bricks and mortar development by Silfab. So that facility is about 800,000 square feet. It is a massive building. It takes about 20 minutes to walk from one side to the other. And it is big enough, and it has all of the civil engineering done for 2 gigawatts of cell and another gigawatt of module capacity. So we have now landed the first gigawatt of cell and landed the first gigawatt of module. And those are built out and starting to commission and run. But that facility is designed to actually hold more cell capacity. We will get a bit more into that side of things and the domestic reasons to why we did that. But I think it's just important to know that's kind of our footprint today. There's just over 1,000 employees scattered between these locations, and it is everything. We are cradle to grave here. All decisions are made here. The product is developed and tested here. Your sales, service, support is done here. All the financing. We have that many employees that are making a living wage, raising families and owning properties, and I say that all simply because it's a very big contrast to where many modules are built when it isn't a living wage and it is in areas with less environmental standards, etc. We're doing it all the right way that we feel, and this has been the MO of the company from the very beginning, is to be green in green. And so we'll go a little bit more into that in the next couple slides here. So my slide changes. So I'm just going to hit these. So the kind of why Silfab, right? Why would you partner with Silfab? Why would you be excited to kind of relay the message to your potential, your homeowner customers, the building owners, etc. A big part of it is, how has Silfab survived, prospered, and continued to grow? And it's financial stability, making smart decisions. We don't build product, sit it in a warehouse, and go find customers and then do fire sales once every quarter to try to make our numbers. Right? We make sound fiscal decisions. We stay in the black. We eke out a profit every year so that we can reinvest into R&D and more production capacity, etc. And what that does, and then allows us to have a bankable track record so that we can be on every major AVL, so we can be approved on major government and military buildings and all of those things that you need from a panel supplier. There's bigger ones in the world. There's many bigger ones, but look at their books. Many are struggling. Many are running negative margins at all times because of that business model. And so we pride ourselves on just being smart, making sure that we don't build more than we need, sticking to a partnership model. And it's done us quite well for the last 15 years of profitable business. The R&D side of things, I think you'll see a lot of this presentation is about how are we different? How do we differentiate compared to others in the industry? And R&D is a big part of it, right? So we were, I think, the first to move 100% over to all N-type, right? Higher efficiency, better degradation, all of these things we'll touch base on a little bit further. We're always a couple watts ahead because we can cherry pick cells and not need to run the full gamut of bin classes. We've been designing and building modules for 40 some odd years. One of our board members, investors, still is one of our cell suppliers, right? So we've got a very deep-rooted history in our supply chain. And so it allows us to have a very different warranty, a very elongated warranty that we're very comfortable with. So a lot goes into making sure that these modules are different. We're the only ones, with back contact production capacity in the United States. And we just recently bought a bunch of back contact IP as well to further build out that side of our portfolio base on that really high-end, high-efficiency product in the Elite, which is the Silfab Elite product. The ethical supply chain, there's one more slide right after this about this. It's really coming to the forefront now, obviously. It's now called FEOC. It's now called ADCVD. It's now called UFLPA. It's all of the alphabet soup of kind of the things that we'll get into here. It's sad that we need policy, I guess, in my mind, to dictate this behavior. But for us, this has always again been a big part of our DNA, is making sure we do things correctly. Having a clear and ethical supply chain. Again, back to the living wage of our employees, being above board and being proud of what we do. It means that we can't be cost leaders. And I think if you're on this call, you've probably seen that at some point. We're never going to be your lowest cost, but we're going to do things right. And it's something you should be proud to partner with and tell your customers about. And on the manufacturing side, I touched base with that automotive background, but just, fully automated ISO certified facilities, just in time manufacturing. So we ramp up and down production based on how much demand we have. For great periods of time, we do run 24/7. All facilities, all lines go. But there are times we need to simply pull back, and that's again been the sound fiscal decision making that has allowed us to navigate the ups and downs of the solar coaster and all the things that we experience in this industry. Build one module, build it well, so that you, our customers, don't ever need to go back and deal with it. But if it does actually happen, that something does go wrong, have a damn good support service network behind us to deal with those, right? So think about this too. If there is ever an issue, we have supply of every single module we've ever built for 15 years in our RMA supply. So when there is an issue with something we built 4, 5, 7, 9 years ago, a 3-bus bar polysilicon module, we actually have one of those modules sitting, right? So part of that service side of things, as well as again just differentiating our offer from the big, large tier 1 overseas brands. So this is kind of, I guess, a bit of the bread and butter here of the presentation, and we could keep probably adding circles to this this deck. So for a long time, being American made was mostly warm and fuzzy, right? It gave the salesperson a reason to talk about the brand that they represented. You knew that you were supporting American labor and an American company and supporting investments in America. There's obviously something goes along with it with U.S. quality and that side of things, but really was the warm and fuzzy. And then over the last kind of 5 years, there's been carrots and sticks, right? So AD/CVD, right? So stopping the circumventing of tariffs and dumping, which is basically coming from China being rerouted through Southeast Asia to land in the US to avoid tariffs. Was now a strong stick in place to try to stop that practice. And now it's a bit of a game of whack-a-mole as they move to other countries. But again, we avoid all of that for you. We have built the supply chain so that we aren't impacted and we can simply build our modules here and allow you the peace of mind to continue on with the other stuff that matters in your business, not the AD/CVD risk. UFLPA, another fancy way of saying forced labor. A shame that we need a code policy for this. But again, you've seen the detentions at the U.S. border over the years, and how many companies have got caught up in that. Unfortunately, it's a reality, and it is in the supply chain of some of the solar modules that you can buy out there. And rest assured, though, obviously, that Silfab, after bringing BOM into the Americas for the last 15 years, we are very astute at the policy control system side of our supply chain, so that we can alleviate all of those risks in yours. Then it comes down to so now all of that, and what's not in here is FEOC, right? The foreign entity of concern, which is the big phrase now that's coming out with the Senate bill. Another very big stick, which is basically saying if the American tax credits cannot go to companies that are owned and generally owned or controlled or IP related to, as kind of four main countries, right? It's China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And so one of those dominates, obviously, the solar side of things. But so FEOC could be another bubble that you add here. And again, it's kind of, we are the poster child of what these policies are designed to help build the stable base for, because we are owned and operated here with a clean supply chain. And so we're happy again to be on the right side of new policy. Then there's obviously the carrots that have come out, the IRA side of things, which was, the timing was serendipitous a little bit. We had already built into our business model the need to vertically integrate cell production into the Americas. When the IRA was released, great for us. We rapidly escalated the capital raise to build out the South Carolina facility, and that's why we're at the front of the pack here. Even though we're a bit of a David versus Goliath story of a privately owned North American enterprise, doing battle against, in many cases, government subsidized businesses from overseas. The reason we're ahead is that we were already ahead and already planning to do this, and we didn't stall. We didn't wait on any fancy press releases. We simply put our money where our mouth is, and we built the plant. So we now have a gigawatt of N-type cell production in the United States. And so that is a huge benefit, obviously, for getting those IRA, the extra 10% domestic content adders. And we will touch base on that a little bit more the next couple slides. But I think it hopes to understand as well just the leg up that Silfab has in really the environmental and the regulatory side of things, right? When you build in America, you're held to a more stringent environmental protocol than when you're built in Southeast Asia or somewhere else. You have access to recycling programs. We have many long-term strategic recycling partnerships in the Americas that allows us, that when we have out of spec feedstock, can go and be recycled appropriately and reused. Again, a lot of these things don't exist in these other countries. So don't just, when you're buying a module, don't just think about the low cost of a module and that a module is a module. There's a lot of differences between, it looks the same, but there is a big array of differences behind the scenes as to who builds it, where the money comes from, where the product comes from, the environmental standards, the amount of carbon, like right down to, we build in very low carbon footprint locations. Washington State being a great example. A ton of renewable energy, a ton of wind, solar, hydro, non-oil and gas power. So our carbon footprint per module is like a quarter of what the carbon footprint of building a module in Southeast Asia is. So there's a lot behind a module. Don't just look at the specs and the price tag. please do a bit of digging, and hopefully I can educate a bunch of people today on why it is different. So this is, I'll take a break after this one and see if there's any questions. But so this is the facility in Fort Mill, South Carolina. It's at 800,000 square feet. It's got a gigawatt of cell product landed in it already. Two asterisks, because the civil engineering, the water, the electricity, the gas, all of the necessary infrastructure is there for 2 gigawatts. So we are now waiting to see what happens in the Senate and how quickly we can add to that facility. And also another gigawatt of module capacity there. And it requires at full ramp 800 jobs, all from America, new American jobs, high paying jobs in the US. So it's a big step forward for us to get that facility up and going and have, again, more proud people working in the renewable space. Here's a quick poll here, just to see, kind of interested to see why you all have joined this presentation today. What is it that you're looking for? We've already covered the general corporate background side of things, but how many are here for the other topics?
Yeah. So what Silfab topic is most important for you to learn about today? Is it a product roadmap? Is it the domestic content options that are available, general corporate background, or you just want to know more? You need to know more about Silfab, because Silfab Solar is coming up over and over again, especially with respect to domestic content and local manufacturing. So it appears that you cannot participate the poll. Maybe we can check that technical challenge here. Is it working?
Yeah, I've seen 59 votes, 60 votes.
Yep. Okay, so you see more than me. I can't see it right
domestic
now.
Content. It's 25%. I need to know more about Silfab, so I need to be a bit more specific on that. And 12% on the product roadmap side of things. So great.
Well, that's great.
The meat and potatoes of what we're going into is what we need next. So we're going to touch on product roadmap. Should I check Q&A? Do we have any questions? Nothing yet. Okay.
I have maybe a question. So 2 questions really. You mentioned 800 American jobs. So just to be clear, that's associated with the additional gigawatt of capacity, correct?
That's just the South Carolina facility. So there's obviously the Washington State facility that's 24/7 and has been operational for we got over now 7-8 years. So these are 800 additional jobs in South Carolina.
That's fantastic. And then you mentioned on a side note the IP landscape. So how does Silfab Solar navigate the IP landscape with the N-type, as we are seeing everyone from First Solar to Trina getting all in the mix? Yep. So is there anything you can elaborate a little bit more on?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not on the product side of things, but I can graze over it. There are a bunch of different N-type topologies as to how the physical cell is developed, and some of the technologies that are integrated into that. Some are very proprietary in a certain direction and are very clear and covered by IP. There are others that are a very generic direction that are more on the public side of technology, and we have always stuck to a more generic path so that there isn't any one particular aspect of that technology that would route down towards any particular IP. So it has led us in the right direction in many cases over the last 15 years. And once again, we have taken that path here and made sure that we stick in the public domain side of things versus the more proprietary side.
That sounds great. And I believe you're going to talk about this. So I'm going to throw these 2 questions out there so you can maybe use those to talk about that slide. Which modules and wattages are currently available that are domestically made? And the second question is, you mentioned domestic content for the United States. Do these modules meet a full 100% domestic content rating?
And we will touch base on both of those in the next couple slides here. So perfectly done. So we break down the product roadmap in this fashion, and one of these we can even eliminate this year. So 2 residential lines and then 1 commercial/utility line that actually includes a couple of modules now. But you'll see this as the marketing branding names for our our module. So Silfab Prime is the main run rate residential module that runs through their facilities 24/7 today. It's what's in most warehouses. It's our large volume runner. It is a front contact N-type module. 22, and we'll touch base on the 22.5% efficiencies and all the bells and whistles of a premium module. Silfab Elite is our even higher end. We have been building a back contact. It's got a conductive backsheet, so it has a copper layer in the backsheet that instead of having front side stringing and bussing in those lines, and that's why the aesthetics look very different. We have a conductive backsheet that allows additional efficiencies and additional benefits to the operational specs of the module. We are currently in between generations on Silfab Elite as of earlier this year and into next year. So we won't skip that description today simply because we are not currently running it. After, I think, 5 years and 4 generations, we are in a bit of a hiatus on that right now, but that IP technology, or the back contact IP that we purchased is a big part of the advancement of that module into the future. And then the Silfab commercial NTC is our commercial modules, again, front contact, N-type, exact same cells that are used in Silfab Prime. But obviously you see aesthetically slightly different in that there is white backsheet and silver frame, and they are larger. So that's what kind of differentiates them. There's those broader categories. Each one of these, there's some similarities, right? We only use 10-watt bin classes, so we will never find a 425, a 435. We will simply wait until we have all of the production over a 10-watt bin class before we switch. To the chagrin of our CFO that would love to be selling those watts, it has always been easier for us, for our distribution partners like BayWa, and for you, our installation partners, to run the same wattage class for longer so that you can count on those designs. Another of the things that is similar between all of these, before we get into the differences, is the level of due diligence and quality control and testing that goes into these. We literally beat the living crap out of these things in our internal chamber testing, and then obviously send off to the nationally recognized laboratories, RETC, PVAL, those that are doing the top performer awards. And here's kind of your major 6 categories, right? So we do all of these internally on all of our raw material and all of our finished goods, so that we know that the product that we are releasing has met, has lived up to stringent technical and operational specs, and will stand up to Mother Nature's fury over the next 30, 35, 40 years, and then send it all through these laboratories, third-party laboratories. And we continue, and I think we just had a press release recently, continue to rank up in the top performer in all 6 categories year after year after year. So again, another testament to a domestic product R&D team, 100% based here, coming out with leading edge technologies. We're the first one to go all N-type. We're the only ones building back contact, and they're doing it from here. So just another great story, another part of the Silfab history of products developed here, standing up to world-class standards, being tested against world-class standards. So now we're going to go into each one of these a little bit more.
Sorry to interrupt you here, Rain. There's a question talking about whether Class 4 hail hardness plant. That's the question here that's been asked. And bifacial question mark.
So we'll touch base on the bifacial Class 4 hail hardness plant. That is a term, I apologize, Jeff, that is outside of my realm of understanding. I mean, UL certification requires your standard 1-inch hail at 25 meters per second, et cetera, et cetera. We have done additional testing up to 2-inch that we can show the testing we've done there as well. But the certifications for your basic ULs are always the 1-inch. So maybe we have to take that offline, Jeff, and just see what. I apologize. I do not know what Class 4 hail is. Tours of facilities where the Washington is really interested. Burlington, yes, we do tours all the time. I actually have a colleague that's in Washington that did a bunch of tours this week. We love having people through our facilities and showing what we do. The difference between domestic content, build macro. We're going to touch base on that. Rob, give me 1 second. Jeff, again, is a question on domestic content. So let's bench those for a second, because we're going to get right into that in the next couple slides. So I will answer all of that. So here's your Silfab Prime. This is the major run rate module that's in all the BayWa warehouses today. So this is our first generation of the N-type module. the last generation of our PERC, which, a year and a half ago, which was the culmination of 10 or 15 years of R&D in PERC cell technology, we got to 20.7% module efficiency. So right off the bat, you look and see, first generation of our N-type, and we're at 22.6. So that the power density, the amount of power that you're getting out of these modules today versus a year ago, and start to think when you're still seeing some PERC out in the market, and you're thinking, oh, it's a great low price. Think about what that actually does, though, in your usage of the inverter side, the EBOS side, the racking side, the labor side, because you're adding, an extra module, 1 to 2 modules in every residential system, or you're adding tens of modules to every commercial system to get to that same nameplate, right? There is an incredible leap in power density moving to N-type. These are M10 sized wafers, cells. So you'll see that the 44.5-inch wide dimension is common throughout all of our modules now. And something else is very common and used to be more differentiated. I think a lot of people have followed suit at this point, but our 25-year product warranty and 30-year performance at 0.3%, right? So that, I always remember the 25-year number because that's what most of our competitors have. But so at 25 years, it's still at 91% of the original flash test value of that module. So again, that's a huge leap forward compared to the PERC technologies that were out there. So don't just look at the price tag. Don't just look at the wattage. Start to look at some of the specs and what that actually means to the development cost of a project, but also the overall production over 25, 30 years. So that is the Silfab Prime. The next one. So all of our commercial, someone's asking bifacial, all of our Silfab commercial modules are bifacial. And they're actually, I'd even call it a bit of a hybrid. So it's called a textured or a patterned backsheet. So what it is the backsheet where the cells are completely transparent, so that you've got that bifaciality of any reflected energy coming back up off the ground or a TPO membrane roof or whatever it is. But in between the cells, there's actually a very narrow white strip. And so what that does is allows us to actually keep the front side power. So if you were to take a 530 watt monofacial module and make it truly bifacial, just put a completely clear, transparent backsheet, you would actually lose a bit of your front side power. You'd actually fall down to a 525 or a 520. So by having this kind of hybrid where you've got white strips in the backsheet between the cells, you allow the front side to continue to operate as a 530 because you get a bit of that reflectance off of that strip. But if the power does go through to the back, the irradiance goes to the back and bounces off of something, you do then have that bifaciality onto the back of the cell, so you absorb that as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And again, maintaining that same 25-year and 30-year performance warranty, even into the commercial space, which I think is very differentiated. Most have a residential warranty and then a commercial warranty. We're in this for the long haul. We've done the testing with all of our BOM on all of our product. Therefore, we're very comfortable warrantying all this product for the full duration of what the residential is as well. Again, you'll notice, same 44.5-inch wide because it is the same M10 wafer size. We're just longer, right? So you're just adding rows of half cells in this case to the module because of the application. So that's the 530. The 580, nothing crazy about this. Again, an extra row of 2 rows of half cells. So you're getting additional bang for your buck in single module. Again, 22.5% efficiency, which historically in commercial just hasn't been there. There's still a lot of PERC in commercial and ground mount. You're losing a lot of power by having those low efficiency modules. When your inverter and your racking and your EBOS, all those costs are meaningful material costs in the project, right? So, and that's still on the distribution side. I know 90 inches long starts to become a bit of an issue, moving stuff around and getting it laterally in a truck for delivery, etc. So, and these modules, again, the density is pretty high, and so that's still just under 90 inches. So if you're thinking about the equivalent of this module, there's a bunch of 540s, 545s on the market using PERC technology, P-type. That is the exact same footprint as this. This will be literally down to the millimeter, the exact same size as a 540, 545 using PERC. And we're packing 580 watts into that. So if you model that out, you will see material savings, somewhere 2.5, 3.5 cents a watt on commercial applications of the racking and the EBOS savings by just packing more power into each module. And then one step further, and you guessed it, nothing crazy, different design, simply longer module for the use case of larger ground mount applications, trackers, etc., so that we can get more power into those larger farms. A bunch of the commercial applications we've been involved with in the last year or two, just sports stadiums, corporate headquarters, large government facilities, et cetera, when you're domestically, you've been BAA and BABA compliant, and you're domestically owned and operated, and you're proud of your financials, and you're doing everything here. It's amazing how many domestic businesses and domestic entities are quite interested in partnering with module manufacturers like that.
Hey, Ryan, there are a lot of questions coming in, and I'd like to ask some of those. So let's start with the manufacturing. Can you confirm there's no longer manufacturing in Canada and 100% of manufacturing in the US?
Confirmed. All of the Canadian equipment was, and it, the poll is up.
Oh, so maybe, okay, so maybe we'll do the poll question first.
The poll, and we'll jump to the questions,
Yeah, okay.
This is interesting.
This
old question changes with time, right? Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's another. I'm interested in this current landscape, this current state of the industry. What's the most important to yourself and your customers?
So we have availability, technology, price, and policy alignment. Price is high up there, followed by availability. So keep those coming. Ryan, I think you could maybe start commenting on, it looks like price is the most dominant.
As long as the project needs to pencil, and I think we can be very competitive. I will just state that, of course, we will never be the price leader. You can't do all of this and make a great product with American labor and insure it and have all the overhead and be profitable and all of these things that we've talked about and still actually come under in price tag with someone who's looking to just move product from a warehouse. So and second behind that's availability, and then technology and policy alignment, about 10-15% each. Yes. So the question on Canadian manufacturing. I am Canadian born and raised, and so it's a sad day, of course, after 15 years, but yes, to a considerable cost, all manufacturing equipment was picked up and moved into our US facilities. Jeff Adams, I'm not sure if that's a question.
I will help you guiding the questions a little bit. On the topic of price and what you elaborated on, there's a question: are there economic advantages to our customers for using Silfab in the event that the federal tax credit goes away, which seems likely? So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's getting into the FIAC side of things. So, which is in FIAC and the one big unbeautiful bill. So there is a ramp down pattern. It's all related to IRA and tax credits and FIAC. So as again, the bill is not passed, it has not been enacted into law, but as it's written today, there are step downs or eliminations of certain tax credits. The IRA and domestic adders that the next few slides are about are some of those. And so there is a large financial, if you're building a certain type of project, right? A loan-based residential project, there is no financial incentive to use a Silfab module other than supporting domestic companies and all of the quality and technology side of things. When you get into commercial and residential lease is considered commercial, there is domestic adders, and so you can get an extra 10% ITC if you're using domestic products, and that's where the carrot side of things comes, that you can get additional tax credits. Now, the second part of that, though, is that FIAC, which is the foreign entity of concern, you are ineligible if you use modules or racking or inverters that are built or owned or governed, controlled, etc., by or material assistance by, there's all sorts of fancy language, these foreign entities of control. And we've already listed those four, and there's obviously one main one that is really what the policy has set its sights on. So by using modules that are built by those companies or inverters that are built by those companies, you then won't even be able to get the ITC, not even the domestic adder. So there's a, yesterday, let's say there was a financial reason because it was a 10% adder with the IRA. Tomorrow, figuratively, you may not even be able to get the ITC, the basic ITC, if you use materials, funding, IP, etc., that comes from foreign entities of control, so companies that are generally based, owned, controlled with Chinese interests. So,
let me squeeze in one more.
Kind of
that's great. I think you can answer the question in many different ways, but I really like how you pointed out the fine details around this, right? Regardless what's going to happen. Let me squeeze in one more question on availability. We have one question saying that Silfab being back ordered. Could you comment on a recovery plan? They are 100% Silfab and they would like to, of course, stay that way. Could you comment on that maybe?
Yep. So we are sold out for the year, I guess is my statement. We are sold out to our distribution partners. So obviously we've had considerable demand. We've invested, well, I mean, the South Carolina facility is in the hundreds of millions already, plus the upgrades to Washington, plus new investments that are on the way. We are building as fast as we possibly can, but we also need to grow sustainably. So, we will ship, 3x plus what we did last year, this year. And it is spoken for, but it is spoken for. So that's from our side, but it is spoken for by our distribution partners, such as BayWa, right? So I'm not sure where the back order comment comes from, at what level that's at, but different products have different lead times as well between residential and commercial. So we certainly have had a lot of demand. We are building as fast as we possibly can, but we also don't want to get out over our skis. We've made it this far by growing sustainably, even in the hundreds of millions. That's considered sustainably these days. Which is pretty crazy, but that is where we are, and we continue to invest that money. And with policy stability, it allows us to continue to grow and continue. But there is a threshold, right, where a 40 gig American market, and if all of a sudden all of the demand gets pushed very quickly towards domestic content, there's a lag there that's just impossible to overcome. Right, you can't go from there was probably about 3 gigs of capacity 2 years ago, and now everyone's being pushed towards domestic content, and the market's 40. That's very difficult to scale up that quickly and sustainably without doing it poorly.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, let's get into domestic content. 44 minutes in. I think I can get through this fairly quickly to the main slide. So I just want to cover quickly the difference between domestic assembly and domestic content, because it seems simple, but there's a big misconception. So we have always assembled everything here, and we continue to assemble 100% of all of our modules here. That used to be enough. That was enough for BAA compliance. And in 2025, there's actually an exemption, and you're BA, Buy America, Build America compliant with just US assembled modules. That may change. The original writing of BABA that you required 55% domestic content. But it wasn't readily available, and so they wrote a 1-year exemption. Maybe they extend it in 26. Who knows? We'll just have to see what happens. So we are still to this day, BABA compliant, and hence why we've had such success in the government and military sector, because we have always built all of our modules here. So that's the assembly, but with non-domestic materials. Then there's domestic content, which is you actually have to build the backsheet, the cell, the frame. You have to materially manufacture the raw components of the module in an American factory, and then you assemble those domestic contents into a module in the US. And that is what we have been doing. That's the legwork we did over the last year and a half, bringing all of the available domestic components into our labs, running all the testing, doing all the module testing, so that we had kind of a laundry list of all the domestic BOM components, bits and pieces that we could use, so that as policy changed and different requirements and different use cases presented themselves, we are able to kind of pivot how much domestic content we added to each module to satisfy each of those use cases, right? And so here's a module. Here's all the bits and pieces that are, that go into a module. Everyone knows the glass and the frame and the back sheet, but on the left there's obviously a bunch of other bits and pieces that go into it. My product team is rolling over right now hearing me call it all bits and pieces. But here's your generic breakdown, and this is then how the IRS broke down their domestic content table based on these, right? So the IRA, what is it? Well, it's an incentive to meet, you meet a specific domestic content percentage in the project. You can mix inverters, racking modules together to achieve that, to get this extra adder. Who qualifies? We touched base on this. It has to be a commercially oriented project. So it has to be owned by a commercial entity, i.e. a commercial project, ground mount, utility, or a residentially leased product, because that would be run by the Sunruns, the Sonovas, the Good Leaps, etc. They would be considered a commercial entity. Therefore, they could also qualify for this. It has been 40% threshold. The new Senate bill has it going to 45% immediately and 50% in 2026. That was a miss in the original legislation, that was the intention, but it wasn't written that way. The bill that's currently in the Senate is looking to correct that. And so there's a stepping up of that minimum threshold that you need of domestic content to achieve that extra 10% ITC adder. So this next line is actually incorrect as of 36 hours ago, because they needed to adjust it, and they now have. How do you determine if your project qualifies? Have a lawyer and an accountant and all sorts of smart people review the IRA guidance and develop your strategy accordingly. Again, back to the precursor statement at the beginning of the presentation. We are not a team of lawyers or accountants or anything. This is our general overview of the topic. Please do seek professional guidance on all of these things. So here's the table that the IRS comes up with, right, and says, okay, here's all your components that can be domestic. Here is the percent contribution for each of those components. And if you can get all of those components, then you can also add that production side of things. So someone, I think I saw in the Q&A, or there was a question, can you make 100%? No, there is no glass. So there is no readily available, commercially available produced PV floating tempered glass available in the US today. It is a major infrastructure project that has not been created. And with some of the uncertainty in the policy today, I'm not sure anyone's going to jump forth at a $500-800 million project to get a new glass plant up and operational to build PV glass until some stability comes. But so you can add these various components to add up and then contribute different portions based on that project type. And so we get questions all the time. Do you have domestic content modules? There's no ability for us to answer that question, because ultimately, how much domestic content are you looking for? What type of project? What are you pairing it with that's also domestic versus non-domestic? It's a kind of a choose your own adventure. You need to do a bunch of legwork to understand how to answer that question. So now here's the main slide here, and tried to simplify this into one. Here's our solution to this, and these use cases can change and will likely change as time goes on. So each one of our products, right, our basic SKUs, I could add the 630XL there too, can be built in really kind of 3 iterations. One, it can be assembled with non-domestic BOM, right? This is what we've been building. We bring our materials in from offshore, and we assemble the module here and we sell it. We've been doing that for 15 years. We can do light domestic SKUs, right? So DCA2, DCA3 are kind of designed with different use cases in mind. When you're pairing with a specific inverter that's domestic or non-domestic, specific racking that's domestic, to try to achieve those. And so you're basically adding that DCA suffix onto the end of the SKU. So that module is verbatim. It's the same cut sheet. There's no specific different cut sheet for it. That can be mixed in the same string as the regular 440QD. They're electrically identical. The country of origin of the components is different. And so that is, light domestic SKUs are a DCA. Anytime you see DCA, it means just a few frame, EVA, backsheet, junction box, a couple of the components when you're pairing with other domestic components. to achieve that 40 or 45% domestic. Then the high domestic SKUs will be, the suffix will be DCB, and that will have our US cell plus frame, EVA, battery. We add as much domestic content as we can into that module. So availability for each one of these can differ, right? We've still been selling out some non-domestic commercial towards the end of the year. The DCB at the bottom, 2025 was sold out by October of 2024. We only have a 1 gig cell facility. There is 40 gigs of market, of which, in theory, I guess everything other than residential loan, which is like 2 gigs, 38 gigawatts of the market, in theory, could use these domestic cells to achieve the domestic adder and get an extra 10%. So there is not nearly enough between ourselves and a few other of our competitors that are getting close to beginning cell production. So the availability of that high domestic product is sold generally 6 to 12 months in advance. That is, so maybe we'll stop there and see. I know there will be questions on that, but I don't know where we ended up here. We touched the build, the BAA compliance. We touched the IP. What about Silfab Commercial? Also in back order. Again, Silfab Commercial is sold out through the year, but sold out to our distribution partners. So we would need to find it through them, but we would not be taking any additional orders from us this year. We are certainly already, Q1 is building up quickly because now there's the safe harbor rush to try to, if the Senate bill goes through as planned, you want to buy 5% of your product to still use the 2025 rules instead of the 2026 rules with a step down in the ITC. So there is now a further rush on domestic products from ourselves and others into Q1 of next year. So I like managing 4 to 6 week lead times, preferentially. I know Daniela and the BayWa team would love much shorter lead times, but this is the solar coaster, and unfortunately, things do swing pretty wildly back and forth. And
maybe I could jump in here and support what you were saying, Ryan. So this part in particular, it's so important to do forecasting with us so we can do that successfully also with our partners. So for everyone who asked about availability and when the product is coming in, please, your BayWa rep should be your closest friend. So make sure you're in touch with them, put in your forecasts. So a call out, please reach out to us. And of course, to Silfab, to Ryan and his team, anytime. We are happy to have a conversation, the three of us.
Absolutely. So are there other questions? Or I do have 3 more slides on footprint map. Market primarily US. Yes, we are.
A very specific question.
In the US. Market distribution, low double digit on the residential side market share, probably high single digit on the CNI, small ground mount side. We do not play in the utility scale. So I don't know what that leads to in totality, but we know our lane and we like to stay in it, and we don't play in the utility scale, but we get up into the community solar garden. So anything from 5 kilowatts to 20 megawatt type of projects is generally our place, and we have a good representation across that footprint. We are a privately held company, Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous attendee, so we do not release our financials. When do we start production in South Carolina? Hopefully soon. We are doing some commissioning now. We are putting the final touches onto pieces with power and everything else. So we are a year and a half plus in the making, through all the permitting and all of the civil engineering and. So we hope that is running in very short order so that we can continue to build off of that. Summarize, we're sold out for 6 to 8, but we'd like to see it closer to 6. That's a great summary. Much easier to manage.
All
6
right.
might be a bit short. Our supply chain is about 3 months. So let's say 12 weeks. If we could run it 12 weeks, then we can control our supply chain. Our supply chain is 3 to 4 months. So that's probably the ideal mark for us. Yeah, getting this far out is crazy.
Yeah, so Christopher, maybe this question you can take also to one of our representatives who can help you figure this out. Especially, are we talking, what project are we talking about? Commercial. We have a commercial services help desk. So please reach out to Glenn and your BayWa rep, who can absolutely help you figure this out. Lots of questions about availability. I don't know, Ryan, whether you have an answer for that. Estimate production figures per quarter, ready to ship. It's all around the availability.
Yeah. And that number isn't overly meaningful based on, the availability is through our distribution partners. So they have the best answer as to what's available and when. The IP statement, and
It was the question was whether it was owned by Silfab Solar, if I recall that correctly.
Mr. Peterson, can you repeat the standing on the?
Oh yeah, does Silfab own the IP behind the N-type cell technology, or is it a licensing agreement? I believe that's the question.
Nope, we do not own N-type IP. We've stayed on the very generic public domain side of things, where there are very proprietary paths you can go with certain types of the topology, and that is not the direction that we have gone.
Fantastic. I think we caught up on all the questions. Please, we have a couple more minutes. You can still type in your questions here. I believe there was one question about the difference between domestic content and Build America Act, the BAA, not the BABA. I don't know whether you could just say a sentence about that.
BABA, BAA was always US assembled, just US assembled, in my understanding of it. BABA required 55% domestic, but they couldn't achieve it, so they provided an exemption. So BABA basically became the next BAA for government funding, but it does have the intention of going towards a 55% domestic content. Our DCB product can achieve that because of the domestic cell, adding 40 to 50% of our overall cost structure comes from the cell. So if we add that and a few other small components, then you're basically up over that 55. So in the future, if they go back to the literal definition of BABA, then the DCB variant is what would be compliant for those projects, so that funding.
Excellent. Thank you. That was very clear in a very short amount of time. I'm sure there are more questions around domestic content, who is eligible, who is not. Just maybe one last question for you, Ryan, just to be really specific. Who can actually benefit from the domestic content adder?
Who can benefit from it?
Well, privately owned,
taxpayer,
so residential, commercial. Yep.
Well, it has to be a commercially oriented taxpayer. So Jane and John Smith, American homeowner, who fund using cash or a loan their own system, cannot benefit from that. If LightReach or a TPO builds that residential system and funds the development of that system on Jane and John Smith's roof, then it's still not Jane and John Smith. It is the TPO. It is the leasing company that can benefit. They're the taxpayer that benefit. And then any commercial project, ground mount, utility, it is ultimately the project owner who's the taxpayer who can then benefit from that. And then there's all sorts of transferability, because many that get that tax credit don't have tax appetite, so then they start playing the tax equity game, and so many others can benefit from it because of the transferability rules of these tax credits as well.
Thank you. It's a really complicated matter, and thank you for putting it so simple with this example. I'm sure there are more questions. Please, everybody, reach out. You'll have access to the webinar recordings that's going to be sent to you, along with contact details. So please reach out if you have any more questions. We're happy to have a conversation with you and our valued partner at Silfab, putting you together with a team. I appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you for being here and for discussing this topic with us. It is a hot topic with lots of different avenues we can go down. So thank you. We really appreciate your partnership.
Thanks everyone for spending the time with us.
Awesome. Thank you, dear attendees, for being here today. Please register with us on our website or for the newsletter and reach out. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today.
Have a good day.
Have a great day.